Okay, so we're gonna go over parameterized methods, so parameters for methods. So first things first, let's create a new Java class and let's call it parameters practice. So parameters practice, okay. All right, now that we're here, first things first, we want to create a method, call it whatever you want, it doesn't matter, public void get data, okay. Now do the parentheses and then your braces. Now here in the parentheses you want to pass your arguments or your parameters, right? So let's call it int x comma int y. Okay. Now in order to access any method in a class, remember this one is gray, you want to fix that. So the way you access that is you type in the main method because that's the only place where you can create an object, and an object is the only thing that's going to allow us to fix this grayness. So let's create an object for the class. So we do parameters practice pp for the name equals new parameters practice and then semicolon. Now, earlier I tried entering the parameters in here and it gave me an error. That's because this object is tied to the constructor and the parameters we passed, this is not a constructor, this is a method. Okay, so if this was a constructor, there was no void here and it matched this name, then we would pass the arguments in here. But this is not the case, this is a method. So what we do is we come here, we have to call the method pp.getData, okay? And then inside this one, we type in the values we want, the parameters or the arguments we want assigned to that method, okay? So we do 5, comma 4, anything you want. But for now, because it said int x, int y up there, we are gonna do int x, int y. So let's do this. Sout, all right, x plus y. Let's see what happens. Let's see if it works. It worked. Okay. Now you could also, let's make another method. Let's make another method. All right. Let's do public void send data. Parentheses, braces. Okay. And in here, let's say we're gonna do string name. Okay. And then we come down here. Now the name of this method is send data, right? It's great. You see we did get data here with the object. We called the method of get data. Now we want to we use the object to call the method of send data. So let's come here. Let's do pp dot send data, okay? Now string name, it's an error because we passed an argument up here. This is tying up to this one and it's saying, hey, I see an argument here, but I don't see one here. What's going on, right? Match this up, okay? Be consistent. So we have to say Sally or anything. Doesn't have to be Sally, it could be any name, but it has to be a string, okay? We could name it anything we want so long as it's a string. Now we have to come here, let's type it in, sout name, the name of the variable, right? Now let's run this one. There you go, Sally, printed. So now the difference, here's the thing. There's a difference between these methods we made and a constructor, and I really want to drive that point home. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a constructor here. Remember, there's already a constructor. We don't see it. Implicit constructor is already here. We just don't see it. We haven't defined it. So let's make one. So remember, the constructor is always affiliated and associated with the class name, okay? So to make this one, we do public, and then we do parameters practice, okay? And we add this, the parentheses, and we do the braces, okay? Now, here's the thing. If I run this, nothing's gonna come from here. You see how this already became yellow? I didn't even make an object or call a method because this is not a method. This is a constructor. Okay. So let's add some arguments in here. Let's say string greeting. Okay. And then we come over here. See, now there's an error. You notice in this object there's an error now because it's saying be consistent. You added this in the constructor, these arguments, be consistent, added here as well. So we come here, we type in, see, it automatically changed it to greeting. We type in hello, okay? And then we have to come here. If we run it now, nothing's going to return. Nothing, well, not return, but nothing's going to be printed. So you have to come out here, type in sout and greeting, okay? And now let's just run the class. So before I run the class, remember, we came here, we created this, we called this method, that's what allowed those things to print, okay? But here we haven't called a method or created an object or called a method for parameters practice. So let's run this one. There you go, Sally returned, or printed rather, okay? So this is the difference. This is a constructor. There's no void here. It's just public because and the name of the method, or rather the constructor, which is the same exact name as the class. You notice in a method we make our own names, but in a constructor you make the same exact name as the class name. You don't just make up your own name for the constructor. So and this is a parameterized constructor. So this is consistent with the other lesson, the whole lesson. We have a parameterized method here, we have a parameterized method here, and a parameterized constructor here. If we wanted a non-parameterized method and it simply just prints something, we would do public void use data, for example, and leave this one empty, and simply do sout and do data is used, right? Now we come here, remember, this is a method, this is the object for the class, so this object has the access to this method, we just have to call it, we have to let it know, we have to let the object know, hey, we want you to communicate with this method and use it, right? So we come here and we do pp dot use data, okay? Look, it turned yellow, now they're communicating, before they weren't. Okay, now we run this one, it runs, there you go, data is used. And we didn't even add any parameter in here. So all I'm illustrating is this is an unparameterized, it's consistent. This is an unparameterized method, this is an unparameterized method. It's empty here, it's empty here. This one has something in it, so it's tying up to this one because it's name Sally, name, string name. So this send data and send data method, these are tied. And then get data is also tied. So basically, when you add parameters, it matches up to the parameters.